feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks and coming at you Tuesday morning. It's January 21st after the Wolves 108-106 loss to the Grizzlies in Memphis on Monday afternoon. A game the Wolves were up by 5 points with just over 4 minutes to go, but that they lost those last 4 minutes 13-6. It was another rough end of game performance for the Wolves. I have Wolves beat writer Chris Hine here with me, who was on the scene last yesterday, I guess. I'm gonna mess that up a few times here. Chris from the Star Tribune, how are you? We're gonna get to the end of that game, but hi, happy Tuesday.
Hello, good to be here. Apologies for how I sound. I've been on the road ever since that Celtics home game early in the month. And I think
so how many days is that?
It's like 19, 20 days on the road or some shit like that. So yeah, we're the body is breaking down a little bit here as we head to the last game of this trip. Yes, but I was on the scene yesterday in Memphis. Yeah, they're in body and half there in spirit.
There you go. Not out indefinitely.
Correct. Yes. Playing through it.
We will talk about Dante DiVincenzo. We did get a timetable on that yesterday. I think that kind of plays into all of this. But I think the place to start, Chris, is by talking about the end of that game. And it's kind of one of those like unfortunate situations where something is going really right, and then that something isn't out there to end the game, and it kind of the story becomes not about the something that was going right, but that they weren't left in the game. I'm, of course, talking about Rob Dillingham in a weird way right there. He had 15 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists in 17 minutes. The Wolves won those 17 minutes. He was on the floor by 16 points in that game, which means they lost the 31 minutes he was on the bench by 18. I think there's two separate parts of this Dillingham conversation. It's that he looked good in this game. I think it's getting believable that he can be a replacement piece in this rotation with some consistency, but he didn't close the game. It was actually with those 4 minutes left in the game where the Wolves were up by 5. He was subbed out. Finch made a change going with Conley and did not put Dillingham back in the game. I know you asked Finch about that after the game. First, what was his vibe talking about that, and how did you think did that decision to bench Dillingham surprise you at all?
It didn't surprise me that Finch closed with Mike Conley over Rob Dillingham, just given his tendencies and patterns and preferences as a coach. So I'm sitting there, and it did not surprise me. It did maybe. I thought he might have gone with Dillingham just because he has shown more of a tendency this season to ride a hot hand late in the game. I thought Rob was playing so well offensively that you couldn't take him off the floor. Now, he was tired, and Rob said when he came out, he was tired at that 4 minute mark. Right. So if you want to give him a quick I also thought maybe he gets a quick rest, minute, couple possessions, and then gets back in there. Mm-hmm. That obviously didn't happen. Mm-hmm. But I don't think leaving him out there for the rest of the 4 minutes was the play. It was probably subbing him out for a minute or whatever, and then going back to him after he catches his breath for a little bit. But Finch,
we've ran into that a couple times with Nas.
Yes,
too, where he's been like playing since the middle of the third quarter, and then he gets subbed out with 3 or 4 minutes to go, and it is because he's been playing for like 16 straight minutes. I don't know. I I get both sides of that part of it, but I think to your point is you can get if you're thinking about in the middle of the fourth quarter, hey, this might be a guy I want to close with, and I know I need to give him a blow at some point. Well, let's give him the blow at 6 minutes versus 4 minutes. But Finch's decision or thought process here, wasn't that he wanted to close with him and that he wanted to close with Mike. So that's how you get this sequence of events, I guess.
Yeah, that's part of it for sure. The way Finch explained it was that he said, I put Mike in for a defensive possession and then just decided to stick with him after that. Right. And, and then I asked I said, what does Rob have to do to earn your confidence in late game situations? And he just very matter-of-factly said, he has my confidence.
Yeah.
And that was end of answer.
That means I don't like that question.
That kind of means he didn't like the question. Yes.
Yeah.
So we moved on to other topics of discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But you have your answers from, from yesterday as to why Dillingham was on the bench. So, look, this team, something's got to change in these late game situations. I'm sorry, but they play the most clutch games in the league. They're under 500. Their offensive rating is terrible in these clutch games. And Rob Dillingham was one of 3 players who could put the ball in the hoop yesterday. It was Ant, it was Naz Reid, and it was Dillingham.
And that was
everybody else could not score yesterday. And you needed to score because Memphis is going to come at you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can make the argument that you need defensive stops, but your best defensive player had a terrible game yesterday. Rudy Gobert was not giving you what you needed. So going the route of trying to get stops was not going to be prudent, especially when you have to sub him out and you have to go Julius and Naz. Yeah. So at that point, why not maximize your offensive potential and leave the guy, one of the 3 guys who's able to score yesterday, on the floor? And listen, trial by fire, right? If he fails, then, and you lose the game, big learning experience for Mr. Dillingham then yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
But hey, maybe you win, right? I don't know. I just sticking with some of these tried and true players and lineups and Conley and it just hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why in a situation like that you don't just go with Rob and roll the dice on a Monday afternoon and say, hey, let's see what we got here, because nothing else has really worked.
So. I think I'm with you. I talk to it I think generally speaking, Finch has a conservative approach to
he does
pretty much all of this stuff, and it's I'm not going to take the riskier decision. We've seen that pattern out over 4 years. I think what bothers me about this one, and this is me co-signing what you're saying, and not getting the decision to not have Dillingham out there. What bothers me about this is they'd played Memphis 8 days prior. And what was the story of that game against Memphis? It was Jalen Wells, this rookie guard, just absolutely face guarding Ant, and it completely dysregulating the Wolves' entire offense in that game. They clearly learned in that game, this guy's not going to leave Ant. He's just face guarding him out here 30 feet away from the basket. We need to break this in some sort of way by involving Ant off ball or as a screener or whatever, but mostly to your point, Chris, you needed somebody else to go get buckets. You knew that that's what you needed against this Memphis team. And I thought what was so encouraging was when Ant and Dillingham were out there, particularly in the third quarter, and they're guarding, and Wells is guarding Edwards this way, you're seeing Rob be like, okay, stay there for a second. Me and Rudy are going to run high pick and roll, the 2 of us. And a Dillingham Gobert pick and roll 4-on-4, because it's literally Ant is up at half court. They're playing 4-on-4 for that possession. Rob was able to go 4-on-4 and play and be effective and score in that. Look, they need, when Ant is being, Memphis is doing absolutely everything they could to just take Ant. They're someone else beat us. This is the most someone else beat us game plan ever. Julius Randle goes 2 for 13 in the game or something like that. So it was it was literally Naz and Rob is your take the guy off the dribble sort of player. And so I felt like it left them at the end of the game with Finch choosing Randle to be that release valve point of our other guy to go, or Mike Conley to be game manager quarterback. And what you ended up getting in that situation is what you have ended up getting so many times in clutch time earlier this season, which is just Ant hero ball. Because ultimately, or Randle here, I don't think Randle took one at the end. There wasn't, I don't remember exactly.
Sure.
But generally speaking, we've got to the ends of these games, and it's Mike Conley and Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert out there with them. It's well, yeah, you need Ant to like make a play off of that and pass to one of those guys. But those aren't great options to pass to. And Ant doesn't pass in those situations. So you're just kind of like stuck in this same thing. And I found it like pretty unsurprising that it was just a really bad shot for the buzzer beater, you know, and Ant's so talented. He'll make one of those sometime and but I don't know. It felt like a bad process and bad results in that game.
It did. The other thing about Rob that I think, to your point, and maybe just changes the energy late in games is Dillingham is like Ant in a way when Ant started, where it's like he affects the other players on the court and on the bench and the energy of the team. Like they get excited for him, right? When he's doing stuff out there, the bench is up, everybody's making noise. I think players that play with him like playing with him. And so I think there's just a different energy that Rob can bring to a situation like this. And maybe it affects how Ant goes. Maybe Ant is like, hey, Rob, instead of me trying to do a contested step back three this possession, Rob, why don't you try to cook up something on this possession? And maybe it affects the offense in a different way, right?
Totally.
I just wonder what the energy shift would be and kind of how Ant would react in that situation and how the rest of the team would react. Like, if it were me, I would have Rob, Ant, Jaden, Nas, and I would have put Julius out there for offense. I would have gone all offense, kind of for the closing lineup. And Jaden was playing well yesterday too. But I just wonder from just a macro sense of if you put Rob out there in these situations on a night where he's playing well. If he's not playing well and he doesn't earn it, then yes, he's on the bench. But I just think that there's an opportunity here to see something new. And I think when you're 6 games below 500 in clutch time situations or whatever they are this season, you need something new. You need an injection of something else. And I think that's what he can provide.
Which is what Finch did with DiVincenzo like a month ago, even before he started starting, right? Like Dante would be out there in a situation just like that, where he's played really well in the third quarter. And you see these specific to that matchup, like, oh, Dante's pace is helping us run more at this time or that. Like it felt like, I mean, we're this certain that if Dante DiVincenzo is out there and playing like Rob Dillingham was playing at the end of that game, that Dante DiVincenzo closes that game instead of Mike Conley. And part of that is Dante's 26 or 27 or whatever, and Rob's 19. It's not like Finch's decision wouldn't have come with risk. We would have been like, oh, Finch stuck with Dillingham. That was kind of bold last night. If he would have done that and we would have came on and they win the game last night, we'd be like, kind of bold, but I got why, because Rob was loosening up the defense for Ant and for Nas and for this and that. But I guess I don't know, to turn it a little bit, it's like I just would hope over this next period of time that, or it would make sense to me that Finch would give Rob more of the latitude similar to what Dante's been given in those situations, and ride it and see what it is, see what the energy shift is, see all of this. I mean, we're going to talk about the Dante injury, after the break, but at some point, we got to kind of start thinking about what is this season really about, and what is, even if you're in your head as Finch and you're like, I think Mike Conley being on the floor gives us a 4% better chance of winning this game because of game management and X and Y and Z. I don't know. It's just I don't know if they're there yet, but at some point, I think you got to think about it a little bit more big picture, or even consider how little you've played Rob in the first half of the season and be like, maybe we do just need to see what this is here. And if it costs us a 4%, like our odds of winning the game slides down nominally, I don't know, maybe so be it. It's I'm curious to see when or if Finch shifts his perspective in clutch time stuff at all.
Yeah. Now we have seen him, to your point about Dante, we have seen him become more flexible with closing lineups and be willing to not be as rigid as he was earlier in the season. So I wonder if after today or yesterday, I wonder if that changes in the future with
Sure.
Rob, and maybe he sticks with them if it happens again on Wednesday night or Saturday against Denver. Who knows, right? So I do wonder if Finch is thinking along the same lines after going back to Mike and it didn't work.
Right.
Does he give it a shot if he's in a similar situation in a game coming up here? Because he has shown that he is willing to ride a hot hand and bench Rudy or Mike or Julius or whoever, right? And it's about the only one that doesn't get benched late in closing lineups anymore.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's
everybody else is on notice in closing time lineups, except for Ant. That's it.
Yeah. It is less like dogmatic than it was even like last season from a closing lineup standpoint, or even has become progressively less dogmatic. To be fair to Finch, that you're right. That's a good thing to bring up there. It's more the idea of maybe the higher upside swing versus the more conservative play of, Dillingham versus Conley in that way. And we'll see if that shifts from him, because this is going to happen again, Chris. Like particularly with DiVincenzo out, like Dillingham's going to play. There's going to be an opportunity here, and they're going to need that, I think, to, if for nothing else, to kind of save the vibes of the season, or the second half of the season in many ways too. So it'll be interesting to track. We'll talk about Dante more here because this all ties together. I'm going to grab our first break here. Let y'all know that today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. Always a great option for a place to go watch Wolves games with other Wolves fans. If the Wolves game is on, as you know, the sound of the Wolves game will be on, and the projector screens will have the game playing at Falling Knife Brewing Company. An added thing they have going for January. We love their beer, talk about that all the time, but a lot of people, are not consuming alcohol for the month of January. It's like dry January, and they know that, and they have an expanded NA cocktail list during that time. They still want it to be a place that people come to and are hanging out. They also have THC infused beverages as well, which goes in with their high January promotion. It's $1 off cans in the tap room and $4 off their to-go 4-packs of their THC infused beverages. So as always, we love Falling Knife. We want that to be a place that you go watch Wolves games at. And, even if you're doing dry January, it doesn't have to prevent you from going there and watching a Wolves game with other Wolves fans against Falling Knife Brewing Company, Northeast Minneapolis. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. I was just looking at the slate before we hit record this morning. We got the two national TV games tonight are Knicks and Nets. And then it's Nuggets and Sixers. So I picked one from each of those. Look at our guy, Karl Anthony Towns, 2.5 turnovers. A little feisty, scrappy Brooklyn team. I'm going to say Cat has more than 2.5 turnovers in that game. And then give me Jokic with Embiid not playing to have more than 48.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. But I also saw they already have a Jaden Daniels promotion going on there. So if you're going to throw a lineup together tonight, maybe for some NBA games, take advantage of that Jaden Daniels free square, where if he throws for 1 passing yard next Sunday, you win that square as well. All 3 of those hit. You put $20 on that. That would pay out $100. If you want to try out Prize Picks and have not yet, use prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Use the promo code Dane if it's your first time depositing. When you use promo code Dane, your account will be credited with a $50 promotion. Prizepicks.com, Prize Picks app. All right, Chris, let's keep going. You're looking at me like you have some thoughts.
I was just thinking, like, what if you hit the first 2 legs of that parlay, and then for some reason Jaden Daniels doesn't throw for a yard, right?
I would think because it's like a promotion. Yeah, if he like Aaron Rodgers is like first stop back. Now he maybe drinks that. Yeah,
I know, right?
It would actually be funny if I lost $20 like that. I'd be like, all right. That's okay.
I would quit gambling forever and ever.
Yeah. That's really good.
This is not for me. This is not for me.
All right, let's do just like Dante injury, a little bit bigger picture here. Out indefinitely.
Yeah.
I don't know, kind of similar prognosis and timing to the Cat thing last year. I was thinking, I mean, the Cat was like a little bit later, but we didn't have a specific timetable. It was kind of looking like it might be like 20 games, if I'm remembering correctly back then. Feels kind of similar to that, and similar in the sense that he is going to come back. Like we did know that with Carl too pretty early, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, we could talk about how it maybe reframes the season a little bit, after that, but just sort of what was said last. You were there. I'm assuming Finch talked about it. What's kind of the vibe around the fact that Dante's injured? I know I was there in New York, and then this weekend, but there wasn't any. It was everyone was like, "Oh, we don't really know yet." So, did that feel any different on Monday?
It didn't. I think there's just not a lot of, we don't have clarity on just when he's coming back, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just hard to really say, okay, well, we know they're without Dante for 2 months or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever. Mm-hmm. You thought about the Cat injury. I actually had a different flashback with this. And remember Jake Layman?
Yeah, but that was his toe too, right?
It was his toe. It was a toe injury, right?
You're right.
In 2019, 2020, I just pulled it up. Yeah. Jake Layman with a toe injury was out from November 20th until February 24th. So 3 months.
Yeah.
Now who knows if that's the same here? If it was 3 months, that takes you into the postseason at that point. Right. So we'll wait and see what the prognosis is here. One of the things with the Wolves, they're a little more, and I think the Cat injury played a big role in this. They've been a lot more forthcoming with injury updates and news with guys in the past couple of seasons here. So, we're not going to be kind of scratching our heads and wondering the same way we were with the Cat injury. I think when they have a timetable, they will announce it and they will set it. Like they said in their release yesterday, second opinion upcoming. Mm-hmm. And
you don't think it'll be day to day for 3 months like Jake Layman was? That was a different regime.
That was a different, yes, that was a different time. That was a different time. Now we get a little more clarity when it comes to timetables and things like that, which is it just benefits all involved. Players, fans, media, everybody benefits when there's a little bit of clarity because you're not hounding the player as to when they're coming back. Fans on social media aren't speculating. So it's just helpful to have this information. Anyway, you can all Google grade 3 toe sprains and see what it looks like, right? And I'm sure everybody was doing that yesterday. And you could see that it doesn't look good in terms of how quickly he'll be back out there, right? Multi-week injury. The thing that I would say is Dante DiVincenzo is a professional athlete. He has access to top-notch care and rehabilitation, and that will be his primary focus, as he's trying to work his way back. So how that affects the timetable you see on WebMD, I don't know, So I think keep that in mind as you do your IMDbing of grade 3 toe sprains. Yeah. As usual, it's never
say IMDb.
It's never a great idea to do that, especially if you get sick at 2 a.m, like some people might be currently.
Multi-week injury,
right?
Nasal
congestion. How possible causes?
Cancer.
Bubonic plague, no. Things like that.
No, that's good. That's a good reminder and framing. I mean, it was pretty clear when we were in New York that by Finch not talking about it at all, that when he was listed out for that first game, there was going to be a serious nature to this. There's going to be some sort of extended stretch of time. It sucks. I mean, it just in general, like an interesting thing about this Wolves team in the first 40 games of the season, half of it was they were so healthy.
Yes. That's what's so disappointing that they weren't better.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and
everybody healthy.
And I think that's like if you want to have like a, rational process of thinking about the rest of the season and the trade deadline and all of that, what does need to be considered, along with many other things, is in those first 40 games of the season, this team was wildly healthy. The only players who got hurt were the ninth man, the guy who was sometimes the ninth man, and Rob Dillingham, who was playing like 8 minutes a night, and then a deep bench player who hurt his foot in the G League. So it wasn't only just like the same guys were playing all the time, the same guys were playing with the same guys, right? Like we got to know these like different lineup combinations, because we'd be like, yeah, January, like Rudy and Gobert would play with Nikhil and Nas and Duds, like it was, and that is clearly breaking up and changing, as we saw Joe Ingles play against Cleveland and Luka Garza played for a couple minutes last night. I mean, we're just, we're past that point of the season. And it's unfortunate because in those 40 games, and maybe it took too long, but it felt like they did find something in the starting lineup change. They found some things with lineup combinations with Julius and Nas, and now it's just going to be harder or you're going to have to find different things, but you're not going to have Donte DiVincenzo anymore, who was such a big part of all of that. So I don't know. It's a big disappointment. It's unfortunate because what was it, 3-4 games of him in the starting lineup, and now, I don't see how this can't start to reframe your understanding of how many wins this team is going to have, or where it can go, or what it can reasonably be by the trade deadline. It's approaching being a team that's like all in focused on getting as high of a seed and winning as many playoff games as possible. I'm not saying that doesn't make sense.
Right.
But like you're approaching that territory, right? Like it's just you're 500, season's halfway over and one of your best players is hurt and you don't have a real identity or chemistry, or a lot of your players are playing a lot worse than last season. I mean, it's just like, I don't know, like not a very good team.
And that's in a few weeks here. If they're still kind of in this position at the deadline, you wonder what is the approach that you take to the deadline at that point.
Right.
Do you become, again, with the second apron and the restrictions that happen therein, it's very hard to make a trade. But, do you become, I don't want to say the word sellers, but like quasi sellers or whatever that entails. I don't know.
I more of an open mind, right? Like
more of an open mind into
different types
people.
of moves.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm with
and then does that open up a pathway to playing some of the younger players?
I think Nikhil would be an example of being a seller, right? If you just traded him off for whatever you could get back.
Yeah.
And that seems like a bridge too far, even for us saying like, hey, be real, you're kind of just like a 500 team. But there are things more in the middle that are related to the rotation and who's giving opportunities, and that I think those things make sense to consider.
100%. So, I still don't know quite how the deadline is going to shake out. Nobody really knows until the week of, and even 2 or 3 days out. That's just how it works in the NBA. It's just very hard to see what moves are out there. Sorry, Twitter crowd that always says, are they going to trade Julius? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? We don't know. Sorry. We just don't know. And, right now they're in a very weird place as a team. To your point, combinations are getting shaken up. Rob is entering the rotation. And where does this all fall at the end of the day? I don't know, but right now they're a 500 team that is a second apron team, and that's not acceptable to be second apron and 500. So, where you shake up the roster from there, I don't know at this point. At least in the immediate. In the immediate,
I'm trying to think about it through the Julius prism, given the news that DiVincenzo's out, right? And it's interesting because in ways he's playing better. And I know that doesn't sound good off that game last night when he was 2 for 13, but Randall is is playing more like the way that they want and need him to play, right? And the Knicks game was pretty good. Chunks of the Cavs game were good, and it is more like I was looking at his line last night. It was like, like 5, 11, and 7. It's like kind of Ben Simmons-y, like Sixers numbers where it's not really scoring, but you're like, oh, like you are getting rebounds, you are playmaking some, and if you're watching these games, like, I mean, how many times in that game yesterday, Chris, did Randall come in? 2 guys go to him. He kicks it wide to a wide open Jaden McDaniels or Mike Conley, and they miss a 3. I mean, that like, seriously, like 7. I mean, I don't know, like that.
Yeah, no, it felt like a lot. Yesterday,
lot.
It did feel like a lot.
Yeah,
yeah.
So I say that to mean like the progression of what Finch wanted Julius to be from a playmaking standpoint is happening, and the only way that I could really get at all on the like bandwagon of what Finch was trying to, his just adamant belief in Randall was like, okay, if Finch can get him to play this way, then maybe it's a better version of the team that can be maximized from wins and playoff seeding this season. Like, I got why Finch thought the best version of this team included getting the most out of Randall. That I get that. My problem with it was I just felt like that didn't ever have that high of a ceiling in the first place, when it felt like Finch believed that it could get them, if it all clicked together, it could get them back to the Western Conference Finals. So I'm sitting here, honestly, over the past month, really even, growing to appreciate more of Randall's game. But now I'm looking at where this team is at with the DiVincenzo injury and thinking that, well, let's just kind of throw away what the ceiling of this team is, because now it just isn't that high. And I don't know, maybe that sounds stupid. And months from now, it's like, oh, you thought this team was completely dead in the water. Like, I don't know. I guess I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's just a dead in the water team, right? So why would, if that is true, or even if it seems like a likelihood, why would you continue to go the Randall route? That part will be, I don't know. I'm curious to see how I feel about it, because I could see myself, and we get to like middle of February and it's like, this is still this much Julius Randle. He didn't trade him, and it still feels like he's the main thing, and Dante's still out. I don't know. That's the part that I don't really know how to.
It's a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of thoughts rattling around that head of yours, huh?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find talking points for the rest of this season.
I'll say this: I agree with you that I think Julius is fitting in better, and the way that he has played has been better. I think you're seeing fewer of these eyesore possessions out of him.
Yeah,
right. I think he's been a little smoother in terms of his decision making, in terms of getting off the ball. To your point, and I think this is part of where the Wolves are just at as a whole this season and why they're struggling. It's not, I don't think the team is looking at it as it's all Julius's fault. I mean, if Jaden was better offensively throughout the course of the season, if Mike was better offensively throughout the course of the season, if Rudy wasn't as inconsistent as he's been throughout the season, this team is better, right? It's not all on Julius when it comes to evaluating the troubles that this team has had. Yes, Julius has been a part of it at times. But I honestly do think the last month you could see him fitting in better and getting better and stamping out some of the the badness, for lack of a better word, of his game to fit in with how the Wolves want to play. When he swings open to open guys and they miss the shots, this is what this team has been. When Ant's double teamed and he gets off of the ball and guys miss shots, that's where they're at. That's where this team is at. That's just kind of where they are.
And Finch has had like a process over results view to that the whole time.
And you usually do, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing to your point, because you're asking about the ceiling and where this team is at, if they're dead in the water, if they're this. One thing that Finch did say before the New York game, and again, keep in mind that they probably know at this point that Dante's out for a while. He did say, we feel like we have a run in us. He's like, we think we're close. Yeah. And this was even after Dante got hurt. So I don't know that internally, and maybe that's just coach speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that internally they're necessarily feeling or evaluating that this team is dead in the water. I think they have a belief that they are not far away from putting together a good 2-week run or something like that and making a move up the standings. I don't know. I don't know that they view it that way. Yeah.
Let's move to Gobert, because I think that's related to the Finch believing they have a run in them piece. And I think I would be more in line with Finch and being like, yeah, I could see them having a run in them because Ant obviously is very special offensively. Randall is coming into finding a better playmaking role and finding success through that in a way that you go, okay, this kind of makes sense from a roster construction standpoint. The issue, though, is Gobert that I'm struggling with, and I can only kind of picture that run in them if I knew I was getting last season's or something close to last season's version of Rudy Gobert. I mean, he had 4 points on 1 of 5 shooting last night. He had 4 rebounds, only 2 defensive rebounds. He told you, quote, Finch did, we need him to rebound at a high level. 2 defensive rebounds is not enough, Finch said. I thought for the most part we did a pretty good job of keeping them off the glass, but 2 defensive rebounds is really not quite enough for what we need, especially with our rebound troubles of late. Rudy, we know he has his limitations offensively, and they've been glaring even more of late as teams ignore him further. He's not rebounding. He looks like he's in his head. He had 3 pretty bad turnovers in that game. And I struggle to see the run in this team if it's a team that Rudy Gobert is low on the pecking order and doesn't have primacy, because I think for a Rudy Gobert team to be good, it needs to be a team that plays a Rudy Gobert way. And he's just kind of fallen into being a role player. And I think when you switch Rudy into a role player rather than a fixture of how you play the game, you just run the risk of him being actively hurtful often, I think. And yesterday was one of those.
Do you remember the first year that Rudy was here? And we heard this multiple times, I think both from Finch and a little bit from Connolly too, if I'm not mistaken. But they talked a lot about that first year about how they needed to build a team around Rudy a little bit. Right? Obviously you have to build a team around Ant as a whole. But it was finding the right pieces to play around Rudy and how he likes to play.
Right.
This team doesn't feel like that.
No.
And
I mean, well, there was Mike Conley coming in, and they don't play through Mike Conley. Yeah.
Right.
Kyle Anderson.
That whole thing. Kyle Anderson, Mike Conley. Mm-hmm. This team does not feel like it to maximize whatever it is that he does best. Right. Mm-hmm. This defensively, we've seen this team is more of a fly around kind of mentality team, whereas Rudy has traditionally liked to play drop coverage, so he's had to come out of his comfort zone, and they've been good defensively this year, right? But they haven't been number 1 in the league, right? Where they were a season ago. Mm-hmm. Offensively, you see the struggles, on a night in, night out basis, and whether it's guys, whether it's the willingness to pass to him, the unwillingness to pass to him, what have you. And then he's had his own issues defensively, rebounding, finding a consistent level on a night in, night out basis. He did come in. We didn't get to talk to him after the game yesterday. He did come in yesterday questionable with an ankle. Yep. So I don't know how, was he at 75%? Was he at 80% yesterday? That would have been good to maybe know if he was a little bit banged up and not completely healthy. So I'll put a little asterisk there. That next time we talk to him, and we'll see how healthy he is, or if he's just trying to play through something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think when I thought back as you were talking, I thought back to those comments from a few seasons ago about how they eventually got to a roster that maximized kind of what Rudy did well, and it resulted in last season. And now it does not feel like they're there at the moment. And they just signed him through a 3-year extension, so you're attached to the hip with this guy for the next 3 years, so you got to figure it out.
And so that's the thing that I wonder about, what given the extension, is it's like, I think, again, you need to play a Rudy Gobert way, or history shows you need to play a Rudy Gobert way to maximize Rudy Gobert, right? Like, Utah's style was predicated on how Rudy Gobert could best play, and as was the Wolves often. And Rudy did, I think, because he was given some things last season, that made some concessions as well. But there are limitations to the way that Rudy can play. There's limitations to Rudy's game, and I think you just have to choose to maximize those. And it just starting to scream with, to your point, as this roster evolves, or some of the quote unquote Rudy pieces age out or leave, as Kyle Anderson did, or as Mike Conley seems to be aging out, or Joe Ingles is maybe aged out before he got here and would be one of those. I mean, Joe Ingles 4 years ago was an awesome piece to play with Rudy Gobert. That's what I wonder about, is if you start being a team a year from now, or even 2 years from now, that is playing stylistically something that more fits Ant, how irrelevant does it make Rudy? Like, I don't know what the slide of the scale is there, but I know it's down. Like, it's definitely down. And I think when you see these stat lines from Rudy, 4 points and 4 rebounds, could being 32 and a little bit of age be a factor in that? Sure. I think the bigger factor of when we're looking at a lot of these stat lines and a lot of the games when we're like, Rudy was a problem or not effective, it's because the Wolves weren't playing the Rudy way. And I'm not saying that's like the other guy's fault. It's like, hey, we had to score here. We got down by 16 early. Like, we couldn't just sit back and play the Rudy Gobert style, or we couldn't just look for lobs all the time because this player isn't good at doing that, or that. They don't as naturally click into a Gobert style. And really, Cat was the main conduit to that, offensively and defensively, of being like, okay, we can play this Rudy way. And I don't know. It's just, I don't really see it in this group as currently constructed, how to give Rudy more primacy, which I think should lead to questions about the next 3 years that he's under contract, of like, what can you expect out of Gobert? Because I don't think you're just going to get last year again if you're playing a different way.
You're not. And the other thing that we've also seen is that it sometimes takes a long time for guys to adjust to playing with Rudy. And you made a significant trade where you traded out Carl and brought in 2 new pieces who are trying to figure it out. And I think you've seen Julius, and obviously the Toronto game was a big moment earlier in the season, but I don't think you've seen like Julius give up on trying to make it work with Rudy. I don't think you didn't see it with Dante when Dante was very willing to try to make it work with Rudy on the offensive end of the floor. And I even think you see Rob try to make it work as well when he's out there on the floor. These are guys that are trying their best, I think, to make it work with Rudy and learn how to play best with him.
Right.
And that just takes some time. We heard it that first season. It takes time, and that's just they're kind of back there a little bit. It feels like,
Well, okay, so let's talk about the Toronto play, because I think this is relevant from last night. So the Toronto play, right, that everybody, and maybe there was a whole big deal. It's Rudy ducking in for a post up while guarded by Scotty Barnes, who's like 6'7", 6'8". I mean, Scotty Barnes is not tiny. He's not a quote unquote big. He's not a power forward or center necessarily. But so Rudy thought it was an opportunity to be like, hey, I have a quote unquote small or smaller player on me. Julius passed me the ball. And Julius didn't, because, which I actually get, like, what are the odds on Scotty Barnes that Rudy is going to be able to turn and score that? Like, I think Barnes is like exceeds the threshold of size. Like, Rudy can score if it's a true small. Yes, give it to him. He can score there. The same thing happened last night, except Julius is up top. Rudy turns in for a duck in post up in front of the rim, and he's guarded by Jaren Jackson Jr. That is a big. That is somebody, that Julius shouldn't throw you the ball against. Like, I completely co-sign that. Like, No way. Because if Rudy is being guarded by another 7-footer or even somebody who's 6'8", he's not going to just be able to turn to the basket and dunk it or lay it in. Those players are big enough to contest. You know, their heads up, their hands are up there as well. And Rudy does not have a right hook or a left hook, like a post move that he would need to go there. All right, seal, score. If Rudy doesn't have that move, which we know Rudy does not have that move, that is a fact, does not have a jump hook. Fact. Does not have post moves. Fact. Then it should not be on Julius. Julius should not give him the ball there. But Julius gave him the ball there because of the Scotty Barnes thing from earlier in the season. And that's why, like, this one to me, man, is on Rudy. Like, it is on Rudy of, like, stop posting up. Stop asking for the ball in front of the basket in situations that you cannot dunk it. That is it's got to be that simple. Because then he had that turnover with 2 minutes left in the game because he's like 8 feet away from the hoop and he's like, and he doesn't. Everybody made fun of me that I was like, he needs to get a push shot. He needs to get a push shot. You know what would have been fucking good right there? A push shot. Like to take, like that is the play. That what else are you going to do when you're next to the basket in that situation? Like, if Rudy doesn't have these things, man, it just ends up being this toxic cycle of expectation of being fed to do something you can't do. And it's always Julius who's already off in the toxicity for these other cat-related reasons. Like, I don't know. My patience with the Gobert stuff. I mean, what are we doing? I don't know. It's like it's kind of crazy to me. And if it's on Finch, it's on Finch to be like, stop doing that. And it's largely gone down. But dude, Jaren Jackson Jr., come on, man. You can't post up on Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, that's know your personnel by knowing yourself. Like, I don't know. That stuff with Rudy's getting tough for me.
And when you're not getting the benefit of on the other end of the floor, it makes it just doubly hard to justify why he's out there. And you know, then you stare down the barrel of the extension that you gave him, and it's like, well, and so now you're thinking from a front office perspective, right? Well, shoot, if we have this extension, we have to find a way to make it work, right? Mm-hmm. So now you're making moves to try to salvage it potentially, right? Mm-hmm. You know, and where does that leave you at the end of the day? I don't know.
Right.
And so it's just, you know, we've looked at like their offensive efficiency over the last couple of seasons, right? And it's never been above 17th, I think was the best.
Yeah, 17th was last year.
And the season before Rudy got here, we talk a lot about how they had the number one offense from January to the end of the season. We do talk about that a lot. Right, we do. But ever since Rudy has been here, they've had to take a hit in their offensive efficiency. And obviously, year one, Karl went out. But last year, Karl was here for most of the season, except for that last 15 whatever games it was that he missed. And the offensive efficiency wasn't that much better from what it was the year before. Mm-hmm. And now they're kind of stuck there again.
Yeah.
Right? It's you know, you don't want to put
it has been a little bit better of late.
It has been a little bit better of late. You don't want to put it all at his feet, but that's the common denominator the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And that has, you know, whether it's figuring out the spacing, figuring out the ball movement, figuring out Ant trying to get rid of two defenders a lot. And what has enabled teams to put two defenders on Ant? It's because Rudy and then to another extent Jaden this season are not the offensive threats that they have been in recent seasons. Mm-hmm. And it's had a ripple effect, I think, for the offense as long as Rudy has been here. So, and that's just kind of where they're at. But you were able to overcome it last season because they were so good defensively, and that's what you got Rudy Gobert for. So because
it was a Rudy Gobert team, though.
Correct.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Like I know exactly what you're saying. Yes,
he was
exactly.
I don't know. He was,
and this team just doesn't have that. It just doesn't have that. 100%.
And I get why they're not, they're not playing, because he's given them reasons to not do. I mean, if he's sitting there being like, why aren't we playing the way that we used to play? Well, part of it could be like, well, Rudy, just at a minimum, like, you're not defending the rim or rebounding at the same level that you were before. Like he said a lot of times when we asked him about, what needs to change, and he always says, because, he's being wise and not trying to call out teammates, is always like, I need to look at what the variables that I can control are, right? How many times have we heard Rudy say that this season?
Yeah.
And for him, a main one and a glaring one right now is the rebounding. And I see him kind of with like a frenetic energy. I was noticing that yesterday of like, oh shit, like the shot's going up, and like, not like, okay, shots going up, find Edey, seal, go get the rebound. Like, oh no, like if he gets an offensive rebound here, it's gonna be a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a little bit of like a frenetic energy, I feel like, around that Gobert. I mean, it's normally the stuff Gobert is awesome at. He's not. That's what he was traded for. It's to be a great defensive rebound and to be a great rim protector. Like he has that stuff, right? Rudy didn't lose that. I just wonder, as he's become de-emphasized, if there isn't just like an emotional or feel sort of impact of that leads to, I mean, it's a weird stat line, man. 4 points and 4 rebounds against the Memphis Grizzlies after you just got cracked by them on the glass 8 days ago.
Yeah.
That's like, something's wrong. Something's wrong. I don't know. I don't know how we could come to a different conclusion as it connects to Gobert right now.
Is it just he's become matchup dependent in some ways at this point?
That's what we were talking about last week.
Yeah.
I mean, he shouldn't be. I don't think he has to be. How about that? I don't think it has to be matchup dependent. But this season, the good games, I think, have largely, if not fully, been matchup, dependent. The funny thing, though, is like, I was thinking about that with last night. Like, wouldn't this be one of the matchups that would be like good? Like just a big like Zach Edey who's not shooting threes. I mean, I know he's on Jackson's side. They play a lot of different bigs. Brandon Clark is different than Edey, is different than Jackson.
I think it's a bad matchup in the sense that Memphis is so good on the offensive glass that it can be overwhelming. And I'll be honest, Wolves didn't do a terrible job yesterday. No. I think rebounding as a team.
You're right. We should have said that earlier. Yeah. And more often. In the first half, like really good, I thought.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
But I think from that perspective, especially like, the times where he might get his hands on a ball and it just kind of glances off of him. Right. Like Memphis is going to be crashing, and they're going to be there to take advantage of those times where like you don't secure it and you give them a little bit of room to try to come in and grab it. Like that's Memphis, right? They're going to pounce on every time he doesn't quite grab the rebound. And they're going to be there with Brandon Clark, with Jackson, with Edey to just scoop it up and try to get another shot out of it. Like, so I think they're a bad matchup in that sense, because they will pounce on every time he doesn't just go up and grab a rebound.
Yeah, you're right. It's like if Boston's like efficiency boost is they take and make a bunch of like lean into 3-point shooting, right? Taking and making them at a high clip, then like the 4 factor that Memphis is like, all right, we don't have that gear, but our gear that is going to be our efficiency plus is offensive rebounding, and we're going to, much like Boston plays an offensive style driven to get them those good 3-point looks, Memphis is like, we play a style that is driven to give us added juice from being an offensive rebounding team. And that, you're right, that is who they are. So maybe I shouldn't be saying that should theoretically be a good matchup for Gobert. I guess I'm just disappointed it isn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just wish he nullified more of that than it seems like he has in the 2 games in these last 10 days or whatever. But
you're not wrong. And rebounding at the end of the day, I think, is their most glaring issue defensively. And, they were better yesterday, but he wasn't. Yeah. And that's, if you could get everybody on the same page where the rest of the team is rebounding well and Rudy's rebounding well, it can be an excellent defensive team. But again, like a lot of things this season, stuff just never seems to sync up right.
Yeah, that's true. What do you write about in the newsletter this week?
We got Dillingham as the lead. A little bit of Ant offering his perspective on Rob's career so far.
Yeah.
That Ant reflecting on his rookie season and how it's parallels to Rob's a little bit. We got a couple mailbag questions about Finch from folks.
No way about Finch.
Where I dispel the fact that, to the best of my knowledge and reading, the tea leaves and the tendencies of those in charge, that, I don't believe a change at coach would be coming anytime soon. And then Tales from the Beat includes what it's like a little bit to sit courtside as we get to
Memphis.
Memphis has a courtside media seat, and so does Dallas on Wednesday. So I thought this was a good time to break out a little anecdote or two from.
I will co-sign that.
Things.
That's the thing. It's the hearing things.
Yesterday I thought that. So what I kind of talked about yesterday was there was a play, I think early in the fourth quarter, when the ball went out of bounds and the Wolves got the ball. It was by the Memphis bench and under the basket where Memphis was shooting, and the ball goes out of bounds. Wolves get the ball, guys get awarded the ball, but Memphis is considering challenging the play. So they're looking at the replays, or they're doing this. The players are doing this, and the on-court floor mopper comes onto the floor to mop up something, but it's buying time for Memphis to look at the replay, right? And Ant just yells from the opposite bench, "Hey, get out the way!" That's something you can only hear.
Totally. Right.
If you're sitting in that seat, not from up in the upper bowl, Ant yelling at the on-court floor mopper to get off the floor so that the ref can hand the ball to the Wolves so they can inbound it before the challenge gets in. It's stuff like that you just don't get from other seats.
It is. I mean, I think I've done it in Memphis and Dallas. I think Oklahoma City still has.
Oklahoma City is another one. Yeah.
Whereas normally we're off on an angle, but on the side where you at half court. The cool thing I remember is just hearing Finch the whole time. And I mean, you and I have now known Finch for a while, but you kind of know him in the setting that settings that we know him when he's at the podium and we talked to him about other times. But it was probably the 3-4 years ago, and being whoa, Finch is a different dude. When he's coach, of course he is, but it was just interesting to be a few feet away from it and to hear it, and a lot of the call stuff. I am jealous. It is a different viewing experience where even for the media, you just learn a lot more, take in a lot more than you would.
You just see a lot more. You see how Ant and Finch communicate throughout a game. You see you see Nas came over to Rob to talk to him about something on defense. You see just how much they complain to the officials, which is a lot.
Oh my God.
This team complains a lot. It is nonstop, the amount of complaining they do to the officials.
That one I'm putting on Finch. I will put that one on Finch. He has a problem with the officials, and that permeates the group, or doesn't get to calm down. But I think some of the other
and listen, it's not as if the other teams are saints either. Memphis was very upset with a lot of the officiating yesterday too. Everybody's just mad at the officials, right? That's what you learn sitting in these seats. To be fair, Memphis was doing plenty of complaining as well yesterday. But the Wolves are certainly in the mix for top complaining teams to the officials.
I think they're number one. They're for sure up there. That's awesome. Okay, I'm glad I asked. That's again, for listeners, if maybe you haven't listened to a Chris episode or the end of a Chris episode, Chris has a new newsletter this season that is free, and you just sign up by putting your email address in, and you'll get this kind of 3-part sort of thing: Tales from the Beat, a little bit of a story, and the mailbag questions there too. A lot of good stuff from a guy who's literally spending his life on the road right now, delivering it to you for free. But it's a helpful thing for the Star Tribune too. They want to familiarize you with Chris's work. And if you aren't familiar with Chris's work and you are somebody who cares to listen to an hour-long podcast about a 500 team on a Tuesday, I really think you would see value in subscribing to Chris's work overall, because you're going to get it faster. And sometimes it's okay to, and I'd say this, maybe it's bad for my business. Sometimes it's okay to not spend an hour on a game listening to us talk about it, and instead, spend 8 minutes reading an article. We always love, not for just Chris, but Jason, John, and everyone as well. I just know those of you listening to this invest a lot of time into the Wolves, I would presume. So I think if you're that type of person who's willing to invest that type of time, you would also see the investment financially in their work to be worthwhile as well. Chris, we love you. Thank you for coming on. I don't know, like
off to Dallas I go. Yeah. Got a flight in about 3 hours and on to the next one. Yep.
And then are you going to be back see you on Saturday?
I'll be back on Saturday. Yep. We'll see you on Saturday as well.
Awesome. He's Chris Hine. You follow him on Twitter at Christopher Hine. That's probably, I don't know if that's the best place. That's a place to sign up for the newsletter. He has a link up there, but also just go to StarTribune.com.
Anytime you click on by the way, anytime you click on a Wolves article, we have a little pop-up that comes at the bottom of the screen for you to subscribe. So you can enter your email there by just clicking on one of the articles. So.
Yep. Help Chris out. And I guarantee it's going to be something worthwhile, because what Chris is going to write about is not what I'm going to be talking about or what the other writers are going to be writing about. It is going to be unique. I read it every week. Again, check that out. He's Chris Hine. Follow him on Twitter at Christopher Hine. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. Next episode will be with Britt on the game's on Wednesday. The Dallas game's on Wednesday, so it'll be Thursday. He's writing that one. It's to be a little bit later, but Britt and I will have a pod for you that will come out Thursday afternoon. Until then, he's Chris. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever